Hello everybody and welcome to a video on the Constructive Criticism YouTube channel. I'm Spencer, I'm the host of Constructive Criticism, and I am joined this week by the #1 constructed Mythic player in the world, Lucas Faley. What's up, Lucas?
Hey, how's it going, Spencer?
Are you still #1? I actually don't know.
Actually, I have been testing all sorts of decks since Allegiance came out, and no, I am definitely not.
You're not #1 right now, but you
No.
were #1.
Yeah, I had it for. I consider myself the Guild of Ravnica champion because I had it for the whole final week of the Guild of Ravnica standard.
So you were still playing after you got #1?
Yeah, so I would play a little bit. It was a little bit of me just playing in like the constructed events to grind some gold and gems, but yeah, I would play like whenever it looked like someone was possibly taking my #1 rank.
Cool. Well, we'll get into that in a bit. Before we do, don't forget to check out patreon.com/ccmtg. You can have a Patreon there if you want access to the Constructed Critics group. If you want access to deck lists before the Pro Tour from Seth Manfield, John Stern, that's the place to do it. If you want to support the network, check out constructedcriticism.com and see all the things going on there. But let's get into why we're here today, Lucas, and that's because we have this Discord for the Facebook group, and it's so funny. I think there's not that many people. Like, we had the Facebook group, which had 700 people, and then we have this Discord that has 60 people. So seeing somebody post this screenshot of them having the #1 Mythic ranking was really cool for me to see, because I really care about my listeners. I really care about the people listening to the podcast, supporting John, Seth, and I. And having seen that, I was just like, dude, I got to reach out to this listener. They've got to come on something that we do, and I've got to support them because people like you mean the world to me. Like, I wouldn't do this podcast without you, and so I want to make sure that I support you guys when you guys are doing something great too.
Yeah, I think it was actually before I tweeted it, and then before I'd put it into the Discord, I think somebody else outed me. But...
Yeah, I think so too. I think that our listeners support each other a lot. If you want, to get access to that kind of group, the kind of people that just want to lift each other up. One of the things that I was so proud of with our Facebook group, and I'm so proud of with the Discord now, is just that I think that we really just care about each other. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a fight in either group. People just, if they disagree, it's just like, oh, well, here's why I think what I think, and here's why you think what you think, and it's really cool to see. So, but with that being said, let's talk about Arena really quick. So for those who don't know, MTGArena is the newest property in digital Magic, and it's currently in open beta, meaning anybody can play. It's still in beta, and we're in pre-seasons right now for their ranked play. So if you've played Hearthstone, you might know what Legend is. Well, Mythic is the equivalent of that. Mythic is the top echelon of players on Arena right now for best of 1 constructed and best of 1 limited. And Lucas, you got lucky enough to, or not lucky enough, you probably worked really hard for it, but you got to grind your way to that spot, to that #1 spot for a couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So with that being said, what is ladder and how does it work? So when you think about the best of 1, did you approach that differently than maybe you would have otherwise?
So a little bit with best of 1 play, it's, I guess, as time went on, I had tried a bunch of different decks, and I already liked a lot of fairly aggressive decks, which I think are a little bit favored. There's a starting hand algorithm that they use where it uses the most average mana base of your winners rather than just giving you your starting hand. So if you're playing mono red, you're a lot less likely to get those 4 or 5 land hands or 0 land hands, which on aggressive decks it matters a whole lot more than your control deck. If I have 3 lands, I can operate. If I have 5 lands, I can operate.
Yeah, something interesting on that is that just to clarify, it favors 1 of 2 hands for the average hand. It doesn't just give you that, but yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people hadn't considered. I know people have told me they've been cutting lands in their best of 1 decks. Maybe they play 1 less than they would typically play. I know for me, I'm currently playing 20 lands in my mono red deck rather than playing the 21 or 22 that I would typically play. And that I literally have a best of 1 deck saved differently than my typical mono red deck that I'm playing. So
Yep, and that's the exact same thing like with the White Weenie deck that I've played most of. I had been at 21 lands, and I just I want another Loxodon, Venerated Loxodon, and I cut a land for it.
You
It
got a
worked
land for
out.
a 5-drop. That's so
Yeah,
crazy. That's so
kind of.
crazy. So when you look at seasonal prizes, is that something that you thought like I'd like to hit Mythic for this 5 booster packs and X number of gold or whatever?
No, no, not at all.
Yeah,
The
it seems pretty low for the amount of time you put in, right?
no, it's not like if that's what they do in like the regular season, I think I'll be a little bit disappointed. I hope that they move to something a little more generous for hitting Mythic because it is quite a grind. I know there's some people who are streaming on a regular basis, and like of their march all the way up to Mythic, and it can take months for some people. Like it's not easy. It's a lot of time.
Yeah, I think Jim Davis, did he hit Mythic this week? He's been trying since the very beginning. So
Yeah, that's what I heard.
yeah, so I think it's certainly not an easy task. One of the things that I think about, and I think that we'll actually let's get into the specifics because I think we'll get into all my questions. That's why we write show notes, people. That's why I write these things because I want to get into the meat. But let's start with what decks did you grind that you had the most success with? It sounds like mono white or red white. It was number one.
Yeah, so I'll kind of go through it like as I progressed through the ranks. I had started out without having much of a collection at all, and tried mono red. I know a lot of people have had a lot of success with the deck. I just don't like it or didn't like the Guild of Ravnica deck. There's a lot of cards like Lava Coil, Rekindling Phoenix that are like situationally just like the best card in your deck, and then situationally just like completely unplayable. And it was like Wizard's Lightning goes the same way, and I just didn't like just being in that situation where it felt like I was just like a few cards short of having an actual good deck, and the filler cards were either great or awful. So I played that for a little bit. I think I got out of gold with that, but just didn't care for how the deck played. And so
You should go back
went
to
on.
mono red, by the way. I got some new toys.
Yeah, I know. I've tested it a little bit since the new set came out. I still am not convinced, but I know that it's more powerful. But since I tried the green black like Undergrowth deck that Nassif was playing on stream for a while, and I actually really liked that deck, and that got me into Platinum, where I kind of bottomed out for a while, and it's just I couldn't find practically anything that could win. I played a lot of, and that's actually the first time that I invested in the Magic Arena in any substantial margin was when I hit Platinum and couldn't move.
Can I ask what you paid?
I paid $50.
This is your first investment. You're already platinum, and now you're paying $50.
Yeah, so I had put in like the five. I guess not my technical first because the $5 entry thing is something that everyone should do all the time. I think it's just what you get for the amount that you put in is just. But then I put in the $50 because my friend Wyatt Darby had been playing Just Guy Control and had already hit Mythic with that, and I tried to get the cards for that. I played it. I don't know. Maybe he's just a whole lot better than me, or maybe he's a whole lot luckier than me. But I thought the deck kind of sucked. But I like what I actually tried and got me out of Mythic or out of Platinum into Diamond was this like terrible Just Guy Drakes deck. It was essentially like the 8 Drake deck and Just Guy mixed together because I could just barely ever lose to aggro with it.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense for Best of One Arena, right? Because
Yeah.
you have these threats that attack control decks. You have Deafening Clarion plus Drakes to attack aggro decks. I mean, it's certainly something that we saw people trying at the Pro Tour that wasn't as successful in that Best of 3 meta, but might be something that's really, something that you could try out in that Best of 1 meta.
Yeah, and I thought, like, the deck, it felt almost close at times, but it really required somewhat of, like, a just super tilted metagame to work. And then, I guess, eventually what I realized is even when I was playing that deck that was supposed to just totally and utterly thrash the aggressive decks, I was losing to the best draws of White Weenie. And so I decided to try White Weenie, and I realized the best draws are like 70% of the time. Like I'm winning all the time with that deck. I think I went from the bottom diamond to Mythic, which minimum number of games if you get in a complete streak is 28 games. It probably took me less than like 35 games. Like it was just soared through the competition. It was really easy, actually.
Cool. And then once you hit Mythic, is that when you made your transition to different styles of decks?
So I did try a little bit of Mono Blue in Mythic because I was facing a lot of Jeskai control and a little bit of Golgari. But for the most part, it was White Weenie. Like, really, it was Mono White splashing reinforcements. That was the deck that had been the most successful for me, even in Mythic. And the time, so when I started in Mythic, I think that there were probably 20 people in Mythic. I was one of the first people there, but I was still just winning with White Weenie all the time, and it was kind of, I think the large thing was me just determining that, like, how to beat the mono red matchup with the deck, because that's like widely considered the worst matchup. Although like with some changes that I made in the deck and like just continually like kind of realizing ways that games can play out, I found it to be much more favorable than originally thought.
Cool. That's really interesting. It sounds like you tried like 4 or 5 different decks on this grind, not sticking with just one, and that's super interesting to me. So on constructive criticism, we have this belief of always improving. You know, this belief that when you want to get better Magic, like, you got to focus on getting better Magic, and this applies to life and in Magic. That if you're not getting better, you're getting worse, and we can do things all the time to improve. That it's not just variance, it's not just like the number of people that have complained about Best of One because it's Best of One. It's like, but you can get better at Best of One. Like, you've never played Best of One before. You have so many opportunities to improve, and we really focus on that on our podcast. What do you think your biggest always improving moment was from climbing this ladder?
So there are definitely a couple that I can think of. Maybe the one that sticks out the most is just my frustration when I'm playing like the Boros Weenie or White Weenie and playing against a bunch of mono red players. It just felt like when you play it out typically, like if you just play the deck how you always play the deck, you're going to lose if they have turn 3 Chain Whirler. And it just felt like there was no way that I could possibly make that matchup positive. But I just like kind of stopped and like took a step back and thought about it. I think that's something that's really important to do. Sometimes it feels like you're just banging your head against the wall, like doing the same thing over and over again. And for me to actually ask why I was losing was a big factor in like being able to realize, hey, okay, I'm playing a couple of 1-drops. Like I had the 2/1 that sacks to give something indestructible, and it like the matchups where it was best at, like Jeskai and Drake's, I felt like I was heavily favored anyway. And so it's like, what if I play Snubhorn here that actually lives through a Chain Whirler, can be potentially a 4/4 in like the mid to late game, in which case it does just like demolish the red deck.
That makes sense.
And so like it was kind of like just stopping, taking a step back, and thinking about how games played out, where I made like a couple of small changes with my deck list. I think I also changed how I played a bit. I realized that the Venerated Loxodon was just huge in winning that matchup. And, you know, knowing when to pay life with Adanto Vanguard, knowing when to trade, all of those things, there's just like a lot of, you know, what seems like a simple matchup has a ton of nuance to it. And just like stopping and thinking about like those small micro decisions really made a difference.
I think that players can learn a lot from that, right? You talked about if you played this matchup the typical way that you play, you would lose it all the time, right?
Yeah.
And so often players, the number of times that I'm like, oh, you can't win with that deck, it loses to this. Oh, you can't win with that deck, it loses to this. It's like, dude, if you just want all of your decks to be 100% against the field, you'll just never have a good Magic deck. And the thing is that you need to understand, like, here's what I can do in this matchup. Here's how I can adjust for this matchup, and then play accordingly, right? Sometimes there are going to be matchups that you need to ignore, but like, if you don't do the work and put in the work to find out what things should look like, you'll never know.
Definitely.
So, with that being said, matches of Magic can be really stressful. How did you handle the stress of the matches around the top 20, the top 25? You know, when, let's be honest, they're saying that this preseason means nothing. But Lucas, you could have been playing for a Pro Tour invite and you could have had no idea.
Yeah, and that was actually a big reason on why I had tried so hard to get into Magic Arena early on. Like, I know that there were a lot of people who kind of feel like they were screwed out of the MPL system because Wizards didn't announce how you would be qualifying for the MPL before they had decided.
There's still 4 tournaments that we still have no idea how we're qualifying for. You could be qualified for those. You don't even know yet.
Yeah, exactly. And that was like really my logic is, well, I can't just wait for a Wizards announcement and, be silver 4 and then have to and be like, oh, okay, now I need to be top 20 Mythic. Like, that's just not realistic. Like, if I'm going to put myself in the best situation to get the potential Mythic Championship invite, I should be playing now. And so that was kind of my consideration in terms of initially investing the time.
So that should make matches more stressful for you. How did you handle those moments?
But yeah, so there were actually a couple of times where the grind actually up to Mythic was not stressful to me at all. I think things I have just a different mindset than players. I actually enjoyed best of one from the start. A lot of people think, I should be able to win every single match, and I've just never felt that way. And I just think, I get a feel for my win percentage over time. And in terms of ranked ladder, I don't see any reason to have sideboarding to have best of 3. I know a lot of people think that's hearsay or whatever, but my win percentage is good, and there are going to be games that are going to be very difficult for me to win, but I win games against, Mono Red when it was a bad matchup. I won games against Turbo Fog, and I found ways, and sometimes I'm going to lose, and like the fact that I'm not like playing green-black with 4 duress in my sideboard, like whatever. Like, just move on to the next game. I'm going to play like the matchup that favors me a little bit more. And so in that, I think to some extent I had a natural mindset that just didn't make it so bad. But then when I eventually got into like top Mythic territory, there were actually 2 separate times where I was rank 2 Mythic weeks prior to me hitting rank 1 Mythic. And each time, like, I had won a game at rank 2 and stayed at rank 2, and then went on a losing streak for like multiple games and like went down, and that was super tilting. And that's kind of when I just kind of had to stop, like take a breath and like reevaluate. And it's just like, okay, realistically, does rank 1 mean everything? No, probably not. And I just I actually reset the goalpost. So it was just like, instead of trying for rank 1, you have to stay in the top 10. And that's what I was doing. And then eventually there was just a day where I was in the top 10 and I won at rank 7 and went all the way up to rank 3. It's like, oh, well, I might as well try for it. And I won 5 games in a row and was rank 1.
That's awesome. So you've kind of answered this next question: is how does best of 1 differ from typical Magic players, and what can players learn to improve at it? I think you talked about a lot of that, right? You talked about playing less lands sometimes due to the algorithm. We talked about, and not a lot less lands. Like, we're not talking about like, we're not being insane people here, but like there is some merit to like, I mean, I've had success with it. Cutting 1 land to play another spell, and I think that it only favors aggro decks, right? I can't do that in my control deck. I can't suddenly play 24 lands in my control deck. I still won't hit my land drops on time when I need to hit them on turn 5. It's kind of like about how you build your decks accordingly, and that also makes 2-mana counter spells better in your control decks, things like that. So I think that we've learned something from there. and then let's move on to our question from the listeners. So the only question we got tonight was there anything that you noticed at certain parts of ladder? So whether you were silver, gold, platinum, mythic, like where did you notice the biggest differences?
So for me, it was kind of weird in that I didn't really notice anything in different parts of that ladder necessarily. I mean, maybe it was just the part of the ladder that I was in, but I think more so it was just like the time of the day that I was playing and the rank that I was at. Like I said, I was one of the first 20 or so players to hit Mythic. So it's like a lot of times when I was there in the like platinum queues, there would be like 3 platinum players. And I would play against, like I played against less than 10 people if I played 30 matches. And so from there were kind of some like microcosms of like, this is what the actual metagame is. It's like the same as, you know, if you went to a local modern event at your store and expected.
I noticed this watching Mythic streamers this week, by the way. There's only so many people at Mythic at a time, so you'll play against the same people in your 10 matches that day pretty often.
Yeah, and I think that's like right now, even if like for the people who are Mythic and Limited, I don't think that there are more than like there's not even 100 people Mythic and Limited if I were to guess. And so those people, you play against the same people over and over again. I watched a stream where someone played against like Ben Stark 3 times in a row and just 0-3 to draft because they lost to Ben 3 times.
Why?
Yeah. But so I saw that a couple of times. I don't think that I think that we kind of imagine and like see patterns where they don't exist. Where, you know, I've heard a lot of people talking, oh, I moved from gold to platinum, and now all of a sudden it's a turbo fog meta. No, like turbo fog is across all the ranks, and you just, you know, you
missed it
at the same time as a turbo fog player a few times in a row, and it just feels like a turbo fog meta.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense to me. I you know, when I saw this question, I thought, I don't think that if you took so first of all, I think people don't understand how many Magic players there are. So in paper, for example, the number of registered DCIs is you know, a couple million, right? The number of total Magic players is like around 20 million. So let's just take that 3 million players, right? So, you know, you're probably, if you're listening to this show, you're trying to get better at Magic, you're probably in the top 10,000 players. It's actually pretty likely you are, because you're seeking out this content, you're trying to get better. If you looked at your ELO rating, it's probably above 1,600 on, you know, on MTG ELO Project. Like you're probably better than, like, you're in the top 1% of players already. So like, to think, like the thing that Magic players do is they think that they're better. Like, so often they think that they're smarter than other people, they're better than people. And the truth is like we're all the top 1%. We're all trying to just beat each other out for like this 0.0003%. And honestly, we're just not that good. Like, it's just too hard. That's why the best are the best. And that's why Luke is number 1. And, you know, I'm in gold right now. Like, the truth is that Magic is tough, and people are going to play the thing that they think are going to give them the best chance. But the difference between number 10,000 and number 3,000 is so small. It is so small. And we need to recognize that and just say, like, what can I do to improve my spot right now? And not worry about the things that I can't control, like the decks that I'm playing against. So.
Yeah, definitely. Like, kind of on that, it's just like, you know, if you look at, you know, I have my own personal opinions about how good I am, like in relation to everybody else, whatever. Like, I think it's really hard for Magic players not to think that way. And it was kind of weird when I hit Mythic. I'd be playing matches where people would make an attack so that they were dead on board to the swing back. And it was just like, wow, like, I just didn't expect that from like Mythic level players, because I had thought of them as just like, you know, what I saw like in the times where I played on the Pro Tour and whatnot, like, you know, the best of the best. And I think that a lot of Mythic, still is just like dedication. If you put your time into it and you have like an above 50% win rate, like going through, you will get Mythic. And I don't think that people need to like put just so much, mental emphasis on it, because there's players that, just ran a little better and got there, faster than I did even.
And that's
and
something,
then,
just to your point, like that's something I told myself going into my first Pro Tour. It was like there are people here that won a 12-man PTQ. Like that's a thing that happened.
yeah.
But there are also people here that have been to 30 of these in a row.
Mm-hmm.
And like I don't know what I'm playing against when I sit down at that table, and so I just need to focus on me. I can't focus on how good I think they are. I can't focus on this abstract concept that I have of them or myself. I just need to be like, okay, like what is in front of me, and how can I win this game? And you talk about best of one, and it really feeds that mentality in a new way, right? Where it literally is just about this game, this moment. What is the best play I can make right now? And that's kind of beautiful.
Yeah, and I think that it's actually just great, and just the number of games that you get in Best of One Magic is just so much higher than,
To be fair, I think that's just Arena. I think the number of games you get in...
It probably is Arena to some extent. But even, I've heard some people complaining about, just having to play the current Ravnica Allegiance drafts online are best of 3. And people are like, all right, let's go back to Best of One for that. I'm sick of it.
I actually prefer Best of One for Limited.
Yeah.
I actually love it for what it's worth. And Limited is my favorite format, which means that I probably just need somebody to poke me in the face to get me to feel that way about we'll have best of 3 for ranked constructed here, in a couple weeks. And I think people are going to be confused, because I'm sure they're still going to rank according to the game, right? Like it's not going to be like you rank, like can you imagine playing versus players that are playing best of 1? They get a rank up every game, and then you have to rank up every match. There's no way that's going to happen. They're still going to do it per game.
Yeah, it has to be something like that, because I've been thinking about that, and just like, say that you hit platinum and you want to get to diamond, and it's just like, how long is it going to take you? So you get a 5% increase in win percentage, say, because you're a master at best of 3, you're really good at sideboarding.
Sure.
But like, I'm going to be Mythic if I'm playing best of 1 before you're going to get to diamond if you're playing best of 3. If it is just like 1 tick per match.
Exactly. The only way it makes sense is if it's per game and you it goes the exact same way. So we'll kind of see what happens there. But that's it. That's the questions. First of all, Lucas, thank you so much. This was fun.
Yeah, great talking with you.
Yeah. If Lucas, if you want to follow Lucas, you can follow him at Lucas Faley. It is on the screen. Follow him on Twitter. Watch him as he gets Mythic 1 again next season. You can follow me at Spencer13H. Hit that sub, hit that like button, leave a comment. Let's hear your stories about this first preseason. I think preseason 2 starts in, is it 9 days or 10 days? So it's pretty soon.
It's soon here.
Yeah. Honest thing, I did not even try this season. I might try next season. Like, all my friends are hitting Mythic now because they decided to do it at the last minute. I was like, well, if I knew we were all doing this, I would have tried. So I don't know. Maybe I'll try the next 9 days. I can't decide. I'm not gonna make any promises, but leave a comment. Go ahead.
Invite. You're gonna miss out on an invite by one spot.
That's not true. That's not true. That's not true. I think that Mythic has gotten so big and constructed. By the way, Trey just hit Mythic, and it doesn't even give him his placement. It just says 99%.
No, I know that there's a ton of people in Mythic now, because the top 1,000 are have numbers, and there are people down to 89% now. So
I'm saying I saw somebody at 99%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
and 99% means you're in the 99.
You're in the top 99. Oh, that makes way more sense. See, that's why we have you on. We get to learn. Shout out to Crystal. Crystal Elliott makes overlays. She makes stuff for streams, things like that. I will put a link in the show notes. If you want an overlay, if you want a logo, if you want any design work, Give Crystal a chance. She does amazing work. She made the Trophy Mages logo. She made the Trophy Mages overlay. She made the new Limited Time only logo. You know, we really appreciate her at constructive criticism and everything that she does. We want to give her a special shout out. You go to patreon.com/ccmtg and patreon.com/thetrophymages to become a patron of our content and the things that we're doing over here. Thank you so much to everybody who is doing that. It means the world to us. Lucas, anything you want to say before we say goodbye?
No, just thanks for having me on. It's been a blast.
Thank you so much for coming on. Leave a comment, leave a like, let Lucas know how great it is. And then, Lucas, if you'll give me your current list, I will put it in the show notes for everybody to try and grind up themselves.
I'll give you the list that I got to rank 1 with.
Perfect.
I don't have a current list. Everything's in flux now.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, so much. We'll see you guys all next time on another video on constructive criticism.